Once upon a time there was a poor, destitute man with many children who worked as a porter. From morning till night he carried people's belongings on his donkey all day long, for a few small coins. With this he would buy food for his children. On many days he only earned enough to buy barley for his donkey, and he, his wife, and his children would go to bed hungry. One day a large shipment came his way, and he earned a good sum from it. He bought various kinds of food for his family and a large sack of barley for his donkey. While on his way back home, a woman stopped him in an alley to ask for directions. He stopped and showed her the way. She thanked him and left. However, the woman was beautiful and he kept looking at her as she walked away. When he turned back, he couldn't find his donkey. He searched for it through the streets, alleys, and lanes, calling out and asking about it until his feet swelled, but he couldn't find it. It was as if the earth had split open and swallowed it. He realized a thief must have stolen it. All he could do was raise his hands to the sky and say, "O Lord, all other days I only get a small provision, and on the day you granted me plenty and opened the door of provision for me, my donkey was stolen. What should I do? What can I do?" Then he went to the king, sad and distressed, wanting to complain to him about the theft of his donkey. The guards prevented him from entering, so he started shouting until the king heard his cries. When the king looked out from the palace window and saw that miserable, poor wretch, he signaled to the guards to allow him to enter. The man stood before the king with tears on his cheeks. The king comforted him and then asked him what had happened. The man recounted the story of the beautiful woman because of whom his donkey was stolen. The king laughed and said, "Your donkey was the price for looking at her. With the daughters of Eve, nothing is for free." He then ordered a generous reward for him. The poor man left happily, unable to believe what his eyes had seen. The vizier had heard and seen what happened to the poor man and envied him for it. He said to himself, "How did this poor man manage to get such a generous reward?" He went to the king to poison his mind against him, whispering, "That man, my master, is nothing but a fraud. He made up that story so you would reward him generously." He then asked the king to summon the man to test him and expose his deceit. The king sent soldiers after him and had him brought to the court. The poor man entered the king's divan, terrified. The king informed him that the vizier wanted to ask him a question, then said, "If you know the answer, I will reward you generously, but if you fail to answer, we will cut off your head." The poor man was agitated and grieved, but he submitted to the king's wish. The vizier then asked him, "Where is the beginning of the world and where is its end?" The poor man was confused for a moment, but he thought a little and then answered, "The world begins and ends at the feet of the king." The king was pleased with the answer, but the vizier looked at him and said, "And how did you know that?" The poor man said, "The earth is round and it can start at any point, consequently the end would be at the same point." The vizier fell silent and found nothing to say. The king ordered the poor man to be given double what he had received the first time, and he left happy and delighted. As for the vizier, rage almost consumed his heart. He said to himself, "Luck helped you this time, you scoundrel, but we'll see what you do next time." It wasn't long before he whispered to the king again, assuring him that the poor man was nothing more than a fraud, and that luck had helped him this time. He asked the king to send for him once more, promising to expose his cunning and malice. The king sent soldiers after him and had him brought back. The poor man entered, realizing that the vizier was plotting against him and turning the king's heart against him. The king said to him, "The vizier wants to ask you another question. If you fail to answer, we will cut off your head." The poor man had no choice but to comply with the king's order, for there was no trick or escape in this matter. The vizier asked him, "Where is the face of God?" The poor man thought for a little, then asked the king to order that a candle be brought. When they brought it, he lit it and placed it in front of him on the table. Then the poor man said to the king, "Where is the light of the candle?" The king replied, "The candle's light is in every direction." The poor man looked at the vizier and said, "Likewise is the face of God, and to God belongs the highest attribute. For the face of God is light, and he, glory be to him, is in every place and every direction." The poor man looked at the vizier and said, "Likewise is the face of God, and to God belongs the highest attribute. For the face of God is light, and he, glory be to him, is in every place and every direction." The king was extremely impressed with his answer and rewarded him generously. The poor man took the money and left, rejoicing in his victory over the vizier. As for the vizier, his anger and distress increased, and he spent the night in the worst state. In the morning he resolved and went to the king again, saying, "My master the king, I see that this poor man is nothing but a skilled sorcerer, adept with words. The time has come, my master, for you to take back everything you gave him and punish him for his cunning and deception." This time the king knew that the vizier held a grudge against the poor man, but he pretended to be convinced by his words and sent for the poor man. When the poor man arrived, the vizier said to him, "I will ask you one final question. If you manage to answer it, I will grant you a palm orchard, but if you fail, we will hang your head on the city gate." The poor man was sure he wouldn't escape this time. He asked to pray 2 units of prayer to God. When he finished his prayer, he felt confident and said to the vizier, "Go ahead, what do you have?" The vizier asked him, "What is the work of God?" The poor man fell silent and did not answer. The vizier rejoiced and said to himself, "You have fallen this time, you impostor. The pitcher doesn't always come back unbroken." The king looked at the vizier and said, "If the poor man can answer your question, I will dismiss you from your post and appoint him as vizier in your place." The poor man looked at the king, and the condition the king had set for his vizier inspired him to find the answer to the vizier's question. The poor man looked at the king and asked him for a guarantee of safety. The king signaled his agreement. The poor man then requested that the king order the vizier to take off his clothes. The king ordered him to do so. The vizier was astonished and confused and tried to argue with the king, but the king signaled for him not to argue. So the vizier did as the king commanded and took off his clothes. The poor man also took off his clothes and gave them to the vizier, then asked him to put them on. The king said to the vizier, "Do what the poor man has asked of you and wear his clothes." The vizier hesitated, but the king looked at him sharply, so the vizier had no choice but to submit and obey. The vizier put on the poor man's clothes, while the poor man put on the vizier's clothes. Then the poor man asked the king to order the vizier to get down from his seat. The king signaled to the vizier to carry out the order. The vizier was perplexed and felt that he had fallen into the trap he had set for the poor wretch. The king shouted at his vizier, "Come on, move and get up from your place. You have sat on it for too long." At that moment, the poor man went up to the king's side and sat on the vizier's chair. Then he looked at the vizier and said, "This is the answer to your question. For among the works of God is that he raises some people and lowers others. And this is just a small part of his abundant works, for his actions are beyond enumeration. A short while ago you were the vizier, and suddenly the situation changed." The king was impressed by the poor man's intelligence and said to him, "I am content with God's decree. From today you are my vizier." The vizier was stunned and shocked by the blow. Before he could utter a word, the king ordered the guards to whip him 20 times for his malice and wickedness. Then the king looked at the poor man and said, "I congratulate you on your intelligence and acumen. The world is unjust, but when your luck came and your opportunity arrived, we learned your value and your true mettle was revealed to us. As for the former vizier, he did not praise God for the favor he had bestowed upon him and begrudged you your provision. So God took the blessing from him. And such is the case. Neither happiness lasts forever nor sorrows. Happy is he who does good in his world and helps himself to obey God and achieve his purpose." Here ends today's story. May you remain in God's protection, and do not forget to send prayers and peace upon the messenger of God.